So I recognize many of you from the times I will call you and say, hey, can you talk to me for this? So it's good to have all my sources in the same place at once. So I'm here to talk about basically Muslims in the upcoming election. And for worse or for better, there is a lot to talk about when it comes to Muslims in the upcoming election. And, you know, sadly, with the news coming out of Brussels, I pretty much know that my life will be that much harder in the next couple of weeks because there will probably be something said by a certain candidate that will make life more fun. And I'm not saying that to softball anything, but I saw it happen earlier this year when the attacks happened in Paris. There was a string of activity down here. There was a mosque that got hate mail. There was a school that had somebody write F Muslims on the side of it, and there was a genuine fear among the community. But what I always tell everyone about the uniqueness of South Florida's faith community in general is how there's not too many divisions here. I mean, the faith communities tend to work fairly well with each other. Cosmos tends to work well with the Jewish community. I remember when there was an attack at one of the mosques 6 years ago now, I'm sorry. One of the rabbis came out and said, well, this is a hate crime, because the FBI wasn't calling it that, and they were saying if this happened at my temple, you would call this a hate crime. And you're having Jews standing up for Muslims and Muslims standing up for Jews and Christians. So it is very unique down here. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about, really, South Florida's ahead of the game in a lot of this. And I love South Florida for this because we are what people should be looking at, not only in terms of Muslims, but in terms of the way we view diversity down here is very important. And especially when it comes to elections. And I was listening to NPR the other day. Now, I'm a news nerd. And they were saying something about how every 4 years we kind of get personal with our politicians and ask them questions about their faith. And we normally don't ask people these questions. Like, we'll ask them things like, how often do you pray? And when do you pray? What do you pray for? And then we judge them on their answers, which is really fun because we don't do this to normal people in normal life. Like, I wouldn't go up to any of you and say, what do you pray for? Well, why don't you pray for this? Like, this doesn't happen, but we do it. And then, so you expect that going into religion, like, you know, any election season. But what I didn't expect this election season was to have things like, so do you think all Muslims are terrorists or just some of them? And, you know, to have those questions be legitimate questions that these politicians are getting. And to have their answers be things like what Donald Trump said a while ago of, yeah, pretty much. I think all Muslims hate Americans. And when Rick Scott was asked the same question a few weeks ago, he didn't answer the question. His answer to the question, his literal answer was, we have a lot of diversity in Florida. Didn't answer the question. He got kicked off Morning Joe because he did not answer the question as he was asked 3 times. So this to me just says how much more people need to come out and really speak up to these politicians and let them know that Muslims are here and they vote. And I think that's the important part of all of it. You know, I was talking to a friend a while ago who is a staunch Donald Trump supporter, and I was talking to him about the comment he made about, you know, all Muslims need to be out, we shouldn't allow Muslims inside the country until we figure what's going on, whatever that means. And his response was, yeah, but it got people talking. Yeah, but was it really some conversation that we needed to have? I mean, if you want to talk about, you know, security and national security, we should talk about ISIS recruits from social media. Maybe censorship would be a great conversation to have. You know, does Twitter, Facebook, Instagram have a responsibility to take these things down when they're posted? How much control should the government have over these issues? That's a substance conversation, not let's keep everyone out till we figure out what's going on. We're never going to figure out what's going on. And so, again, being a nerd, I started searching through the internet over what do Muslims even vote for. And now, because I was constantly told that Muslims tend to be Republican and Muslims tend to be very, very conservative. And of course, until I fact-checked this, I don't believe any of it. So I went ahead and did that. And it turns out they were wrong. Most Muslims are not Republicans. Most Muslims are Democrat, actually. About 44% are Democrat. About 6% are Republicans. This is according to the latest research from the ISPU. And the rest are independent. And the independent vote's really cool because just in 2011, when the Pew Research Center did the same kind of study, the numbers were about 19% of Muslims were independent. So you're having a lot more Muslims going towards those independents, and we always hear about how the politicians want that independent vote. Well, you kind of have to go into those Muslims to get it, don't you? And the sad part that I found were Muslims were the least likely to engage in the political process of those of the 5 top largest faith communities in the country. And that's one thing that may possibly need to change in order to get a vote out. We always hear politicians talk about what do we need to do to get the black vote. Bernie Sanders wasn't resonating well with black voters. Hillary Clinton was resonating better with older than younger. I mean, you have all these little demographics. Muslims need to become one of those demographics that they're fighting for. You know, just like Hispanics have done an amazing job of immigrating to the country and becoming a political powerhouse, the same thing can very well be emulated. And we've seen it here. We have totally seen it here with, and around the country. I mean, the same rhetoric that said in Arizona would never fly in, yes, places like Michigan, like the border, which you have a high Muslim population, but also places like Virginia and in New York, where the populations get so big that even the Republican candidates who, yes, one part of the party may be saying anti-Muslim things, like, oh, they want to push Sharia law in this country and all that stuff, but you have, in the same places, they'll take pictures of themselves at mosques. I've seen Republican candidates at mosques down here. It's a little, you get a different vibe from them. And about 71% of Muslims say that have a positive view of immigration in this country. I think that's probably why you get more of the Democrats and the independents when it comes out of those, because, yeah. And honestly, from my experience being down here and just covering all of this, my biggest thing is we need to maybe up our game a little bit. I mean, Muslim Americans need to just work at it. And the beautiful thing about South Florida is that they are working at it. I get emails all the time from you, from Cosmos. If you know Shabir and he has an email address, you are getting emails from him. And I love the fact that it's working down here. And I think South Florida can be a model of what the rest of the country needs to do in order to gain that Muslim vote, and also to figure out what exactly Muslim candidates want. Because unfortunately, unless you speak up, it allows people like the Donald Trumps in the world, like the Rick Scotts in the world, and I don't want to pick on the Republicans, but you haven't heard anything from the Democratic side, saying these things and really ostracizing a whole group. If they were saying this about any other group, I think people would be a lot quicker to respond. You would never, if Rick Scott had said something like we said about the Muslims not responding about the Hispanic community down here, I feel like there'd be a lot more outrage. So I think it goes both ends. But you do have people like me who are obsessed with covering this stuff, who have, you know, got a degree in Middle Eastern Studies just so she can cover this stuff more. So I am there. So please email me with any story ideas. But I'd love to hear from you guys and honestly learn what's important to you when you vote, because every demographic is different, and I think it's important to get these voices out, especially when I think since 9/11 the Muslim voice has been getting stronger in this community, and I think that's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you.